Welcome. It's Josie from Women Who Lead with Confidence. And I'm coming on live to do our Sunday night training. And tonight's topic is how do we become our more authentic selves? And what holds us back from being our authentic selves? This is such a good topic for us when, especially, we're putting ourselves out there at work or in the world. We feel like we're taking a risk. We're putting ourselves in an uncomfortable situation where we feel vulnerable. It's a moment where we often recoil and make ourselves smaller and make ourselves somehow lesser because we're afraid to show our whole authentic self. If you're joining me live, give me a hello or a wave. If you're on replay, give me a hashtag replay, and we'll just dive on in. Okay, so I know why this happens. I know that it's common for us to not necessarily show up as our full self, like the whole you, the all of you, the complete you. There's this timidness that can come over us when we feel like we are overstepping or overreaching or somehow not fitting in. And I know there are good reasons for why we do this. Many women in this group and women who lead with heart are really good with people. You're intuitively talented with people skills and you've developed them over time. And that means you can calibrate how you're coming across based on the perceived reception that you're getting from your audience, from the other person or persons that you're speaking or interacting with. Somebody who's really socially smart does this really well. It's like reading the room. It's understanding the reception that you're getting and modulating your approach depending on that input that you're getting. Does that make sense? You're really good at reading nonverbal information from other people, that you can read the faces and the expressions and the body language and the spirit and even sort of the unsaid energy in a room or in a dialogue. And many of us, especially women, have been trained socially from the very beginning to fit in and to make nice and to be pleasing. We smile into people's faces. We want them to smile back at us. We go for harmony. We look for common ground. We want agreement. Does any of that resonate for you? It's not a negative thing in and of itself. It can be a really socially smart thing that has you be so capable of having this interplay where you're working on so many levels. You're having sort of like the explicit said thing, the content of what you're saying, but then on the back of your mind, you're also receiving the input of the nonverbal reception that you're getting, and you're using this at the same time to modulate how you come across. It's a very smart way to attune your delivery and can make you exceptional at managing people, at facilitating workshops, at hiring, at developing talent, at resolving conflict, anything that has to do with an interplay between people. It can be a superpower. So there's no need for us to downplay this. I just want to caution us that when we start to really shapeshift and make ourselves smaller to fit in because we're feeling like we're too much, or we worry that we've overstepped, or we start to judge ourselves or self-edit what's coming out of our what we're producing, whether it's our speech or our written communication. If we start to overthink our presentation, we're second guessing ourselves. We're sometimes criticizing ourselves. Sometimes we're judging ourselves, thinking like, oh, I'm way too much. I shouldn't do that. I don't know what I'm talking about. They're so smart. I'm not the smartest one in the room. I should be quieter. I shouldn't speak up. It's sort of that voice that is full of shoulds. And we start to blame ourselves. We start to feel like we're at fault. We start to beat ourselves up for perceived mistakes or things that we are regretting in a dialogue or a discourse. And it's sort of full of that that sense of cringing or beating ourselves up or obsessing or judging or just that experience where you just regret and resent the real you having come forward, and it's not helpful when we're beating ourselves up in that way. So I've just put that out there so that you can identify with where are you strong in these people skills, and then where do you fold against yourself? Where do you start to turn on yourself and beat yourself up and think something has gone wrong by using your people skills? I'll give you some examples of people that are in my group right now, people who are my clients. I won't use their names, but maybe if you're joining, you can recognize yourself here. Let's call her Marilyn. Marilyn is a project team lead in a very male dominated atmosphere. At work, she leads teams of men that are very quantitative and analytical in getting a certain function accomplished. And she's really unique in this role because she's also so expressive and artistic, and her life and her world is full of color. It's how she dresses, it's how she expresses herself. She has very expressive hair and art, and she is an artist. And she speaks fast and she talks with her hands and she's excitable, and she just has her passion pour through her when she's expressing herself. And she hates on herself later for thinking, oh, I'm just this crazy woman who talks with her hands, who's way too much, who's kind of like la 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 all over the place, when really that's her being her essential, authentic self and showing up in all of her glory and all of her capability and all of her self expression. So she's editing herself down or beating herself up for not fitting in. Or take Debbie, also not her name. She's a verbal processor and a people person, and honestly, quite woo, if you know what that means. And she works in the healthcare sector with a boss that's very sort of all about numbers and nuts and bolts and deliverables and needs things sort of in quantified measure, data. And when they have these interactions, sometimes the boss asks things of Debbie and she just starts spitballing and brainstorming and ideating about things that are possible. And the boss has always kind of got this frown face, like doesn't quite get it. And Debbie will say, well, I haven't thought it through yet. I'm just working it out. I'm sort of, she's just sort of like on the open road, getting into fifth gear and just seeing what the engine can do. She's not ready yet to present anything. She's just processing, but they're missing each other because they're not communicating in the same way. The mistake is for Debbie to think she's somehow wrong, making herself wrong for not getting along with her boss. Or take Helen, also not her name. She's a relationship builder. In her role, she is all about sort of being an account representative for a large organization and going out and getting clients and being the sort of the front person that can get a work order and then explain how her company will fulfill that. And she feels very self-conscious that English isn't her first language and that she is female in a male-dominated world, and she's also a person of color. And she focuses a lot on how she's other in these interactions, and that sometimes her really winning way of easily making ties socially with people seems shut down when the suits and ties on the other end of the line have their arms folded and look grumpy. And so she's focusing on the detractors that make her feel like somehow she's ineffective or wrong or not doing things the right way. All of these clients of mine are only incorrect, and that they're judging themselves and letting that be the thrust of their response to the experience that they're having, challenging their authenticity. They're not wrong being exactly who they are. In fact, I want them to be more of themselves. And anytime I see a client of mine wanting to take something away from their presentation, that's a like a blinking light saying, no, 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 that means that there's something that actually should be added more. Rather than trying to edit out, how do you leverage that perceived liability as an asset? And if it's not an asset right where you are in your corporate structure, in your business, in your office, in your industry, in your role, then it means there's a more glorious position for you somewhere else out in the world where you get to be the whole, beautiful, gorgeous you. That's the answer, not to sort of shape shift to fit in, smoothing out the edges so that you fit into the round pegged hole. It's more that you need to be the perfect size that you already are, and even more so you. So these people, all of us, we need to encourage ourselves, not criticize ourselves. And we need then to manage ourselves, not obsess over our perceived inadequacies, and instead, rather than going down that rabbit hole, seeing this is my authentic self, this is who I am, this is how I need to be even more me. Does that resonate for you? Or are you thinking, I don't know how that's going to work. My boss will never go for it. Maybe you just haven't been brave enough to actually show your boss how it could work. Maybe you don't see a vision for it. Maybe your boss is somebody that you need to fire and go find a new boss. This is all good stuff for coaching. So, anytime that you're tempted to make yourself somehow less, to take something away from your presentation, the way that you interact with the world, it's your time to find where your perceived liabilities are your assets. And not think that you somehow need to be lesser or better or polished. It means you just need to be more authentically you. How could you move even more into that space? How could you be more all in? How could you be more all you? I don't want you to turn on yourself. I don't want you to think that somehow you need to change, because your authentic self expression is your superpower. It's you. It's your unique way of showing up in the world, and it couldn't be wrong. I'll give you one last example. There's actually quite a famous coach now who has co-founded a coaching platform known as Lucid Living, and her name's Jeannie, if you want to look her up. She is an exceptional coach and a very spiritual thought leader. But back in the day when she was working in corporate America as a people manager, she would find herself dissolving in tears, feeling the emotions of others because she's such an empath. And she was criticized for having this quality by all of her superiors, who felt like it was unprofessional, that it wasn't good for it to show emotion in the workplace, and that she was just crying all the time. And she felt ashamed about this until she realized she was meant for different work. She was meant for something more. And now she's this famous, big, amazing coach and business leader and thought leader and spiritual leader who does retreats all around the world, living her true authentic self and leaning further into becoming even more of her as she's learning more and more about her natural innate talents and skills and proclivities towards understanding spirituality. She gets to study and learn what she teaches. She's in the zone. She was just in the wrong position where and the reason she knew it was that she was getting external stimuli that gave her friction. But instead of saying, how am I bad and wrong and should I change myself to fit in? She went and found a friction-free way for her to express her true gifts. Is that inspiring for you? I'll leave you with this quote from the psychologist Rollo May, who said, "The opposite of courage is not cowardice, it is conformity." So let us not conform, sisters. Let us be our courageous, authentic, full selves. And if you feel like you need more confidence to find the way to stand in your truth, then I want you to reach out to me and say, I want more confidence. You can IM me, you can put it in the thread here. If you're on YouTube, you can send me a message and I'll send you a personal invitation to my upcoming workshop called Create More Confidence, 5 days of lessons to help you get further along this path. Sound good? That's what I've got for you tonight. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.